Hey everybody, welcome back to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. Today we're here with Greyhawk researcher Evan Farese, and we've got to do some guiding with Evan down in the valley. It was pretty fun. How's it going over there in the Rio Grande?
It's good, man. Yeah, still a little bit hot most days down here, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah,
I
we
think
didn't
you might
have.
be the only person that posts on the Rio Grande Rare Bird Alert
Oh
on
yeah,
the WhatsApp.
I try and do both. We have we have one for locals and then we have one for visiting birders, and I try and spread it out between so everybody knows what's going on.
It's just good to know that when we're not around, you're still down there finding stuff.
Still finding tropical parulas. That's the main thing
We
these
we
That's a
need
days.
that.
go-to.
Yeah,
The
Yeah,
daily grind of finding the tropical Parula and reporting it.
yeah, and it
yeah.
wasn't a ton of rarities during the festival this year, but I saw you had a Sabin's gull. How rare is
Yeah.
that for that region?
Oh, that's pretty rare. Yeah, and this is the first one that wasn't pelagic or seen from South Padre Island. I saw it from Port Mansfield, which is on the west side of the Laguna Madre. So yeah, it's pretty rare and it's hanging out, which is weird. Usually when
Oh,
we
it's
get a
still
salmon
there.
bowl, yeah,
Wow, that is cool.
usually when we get one, it's like it shows up on the beach or something for a day and then it's gone. But this one's been there for like 2 weeks now. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's maybe the rarest thing I found so far this winter.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, that's very cool. We had a random short-tailed shearwater someone saw off Lake Superior, got like a Sasquatch style photo. But
I
just the other,
saw
I think
that.
it was yesterday, somebody got like a point blank photo one off Montrose Point in Illinois.
Wow.
So there's either one or multiple short-tailed shearwaters in like the Great Lakes region, which is kind
Just
of crazy.
doing laps around the lake.
Yeah.
Apparently, yeah. Hopefully it comes back again and decides to perch somewhere, which would be wild.
Yeah.
Um, So, for those of you listening and watching, Evan is actually the person that found the fan-tailed warbler in the Rio Grande Valley last year that became kind of a well-known celebrity bird, I would say. So if anyone went down to see that bird, you can thank Evan for picking it out. I believe by call, was it that you found it?
No. In fact, I heard the call, had no idea what it was, and then like 5 minutes later, I saw the fan-tailed warbler just skulking around in a bush, and then I listened to the call and retroactively, I was like, oh, that's what that call was. But yeah, it wasn't even on my radar. We hadn't had any records for the valley at all, so
I feel like that counts as getting it by call. If you hear something weird,
yeah,
you're just like, what is that? You
yeah,
know, it's
That's what you
weird
got to
enough
do.
to pique your interest.
exactly. Yeah, it's what it caused me to kind of like stay in that area a little bit longer and try and see if I could find whatever made that call. But
Yeah, so clearly you're doing a good job finding rare stuff down there. How did you get started in birding? Because you're a fairly young guy, you're around our age. So
yeah,
that's the question.
um, I mean, I got started, I think, a lot later than some people. Um,
You just say that because you have Ryan Rodriguez in the
I
valley.
know
Yeah,
when people have been birding since they're like 3 years old, I feel like I got a late start.
yeah.
But no, it wasn't until after college, and then I went to Montana. I was working as like an outdoor educator and naturalist, teaching kids about nature, and then I started learning birds. And yeah, I had a brother. My brother Louis.
Is
You excommunicated him.
Yeah.
it an Aaron Rodgers situation?
He's the birder, and he's the one who kind of started teaching me a lot about birds, and then so I had that kind of him as a teacher, and then also trying to teach kids. I wanted to know the birds that I was looking at. So yeah,
So did that kind of start the Greyhawk research track, or was it you kind of got into the Greyhawk research simultaneously? Or I'm assuming it was kind of you got into birds first and then Greyhawk was after.
that's right. Yeah. So I lived in Montana doing outdoor education, and then after that, I was starting to get into birds the whole time, and then after that, I did a lot of short-term seasonal technician jobs, working with different animals, both in the U.S. and abroad. And so I kind of was like finding my way and learning how to do research. And then I came down to the valley in 2021, actually for a white-tailed hawk project that I was a technician on. And through that, I got connected with people studying greyhawks here. And then in 2022, I came to start grad school studying greyhawks.
What's been your favorite thing working with them? Well, like,
Yeah,
what's
what do
one
we
thing
need to
you're like,
know?
yeah, yeah.
What do you what?
What do we need to know about them? Like what are
Yeah.
the things that we absolutely need to know that people don't already know about Greyhawks?
Yeah. Well, what a lot of people know about Greyhawks comes from research done on them in Arizona. So pretty much all of the research that has been carried out on Greyhawks and their diet and how well they do in nesting and how many of them there are in the US. A lot of that is just from Arizona. And there was another grad student down here who started doing research on them in the valley in 2019, but he was kind of the first one to study them outside of Arizona. So, if you go into a field guide or a hawk reference book and read about what greyhawks eat, for example, you'll see they eat a lot of lizards or they're eating a lot of snakes. They're lizard specialists, and that's just based off of Arizona. My study down here, we found that greyhawks down here eat both mammals and birds more than they eat lizards. So there's a lot to learn about greyhawks. They're really understudied species because they have such a limited range in the United States. And then yeah, most of the research is from Arizona, where they're living in kind of a desert environment. They're living in riparian corridors along rivers in Arizona, but that's not really representative of greyhawks and the rest of their range. They're a tropical species living in tropical lowland forests all the way down to Costa Rica.
Yeah, what are you mostly focusing on? Is it longevity, diet, kind of just natural history in general?
Yeah, I'm really interested in how humans interact with wildlife, and so a lot of my research focuses on how greyhawks and humans interact in urban areas.
I picture you out there just trying to like talk to them,
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
parrot, like, come on, give me something.
Tell
Let's
me your
communicate
secrets,
together.
Greyhawk.
I do. I whistle to them and they whistle back. It's their like territorial
Do they
call.
actually?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So
I
I
wonder
find
if
a
they
lot
see you, they're just like, oh, there's that big gray hawk over there.
of
The Greyhawk sounds like a superhero for sure. Like a
yeah.
guy that's kind of on the older side but wants to get into crime fighting.
He's got like some gray hair on his
Yeah, just a
head and
touch of gray on the
tail.
sides.
Yeah. Instead of a silver fox, we should call people gray hawks now.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah.
You mentioned that they go down into the tropics. Is there kind of a migratory pattern, or do they more stay put? Like, are we getting tropical birds up by us, or are they like living in
Uh,
Texas year round?
they're in South Texas year round, and the adults that we have that have territories, they'll defend their territories year round. So, like when you come down for the festival in November, you can see gray hawks. But if you were in Arizona, most of the Arizona birds will migrate out of the area in the winter. More and more, some of them are staying in Southeast Arizona through the winter, for whatever reason. Maybe it's climate change, who knows? But it's more on the west side of their range in West Mexico and Southeast Arizona where they're doing migration more than over here.
Okay,
We kind of
gotcha.
realistically only knew slash know a fraction of the information on Greyhawks because it was only the study in the deserts of Arizona. There's an entire life history that people are unaware of for that species. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a Greyhawk that is living in Southeast Arizona is just in a completely different environment than a Greyhawk living here. And both of those are in a completely different environment than a Greyhawk living in Costa Rica. Like all these Greyhawks are interacting with different animals. They're, you know, preying on different things, whatever's available to them. They're really generalist species, so they kind of eat what they can catch. And yeah, we don't really know all that much about Greyhawks south of the border other than just kind of anecdotal things. There's some papers out there I saw a Greyhawk eating a squirrel cuckoo, for example. It's like, oh, that's cool. But that's like the extent of what we know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, why is it that so many species have kind of gone understudied or under the radar in terms of the scientific community? Because I've heard of other species too, even some that are declining, where they say they've never even been studied on their nesting territory before. Why is that these things have gone so long without being looked at?
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons.
It's
I mean,
funding, isn't it?
a
A
lot of
lot
it
of
is
it's funding.
funding. A lot of it is, I mean, depending on the country, right? It can be dangerous to go into places with range limited species. Permits can be a headache in foreign countries. And then just easy access. Like for me, being in school here, studying Greyhawks here, it's like I have my field site and my school all in the same place. It makes it so much easier. A lot of universities in North America, they can kind of get easy projects by going out and studying the birds that are around them. And, really a lot of them are important work that they're doing, but it takes a lot more money to go down to, a tropical species and study a tropical bird.
Is there any thought about genetic differences in populations? Like any kind of potential split? Or are they
You're
all kind
going for
of,
the split angle.
I feel like everything's getting split. They're like, these are probably different. So
You're
We'll
just
too
get
late.
what would it be? Northern Greyhawk and then
the
Southern Greyhawk
Arizona
or something like
Greyhawk
that.
and the Texas Greyhawk.
Well, you're too late. They already split the Greyhawk.
Oh, dang.
Oh,
Didn't
So
even
Greyhawk
know.
used to be a species that went all the way down into South America. And then I forget how long ago, but not all that long ago, it was split into Greyhawk, which is Costa Rica North, and Gray-lined hawk, which is
Oh.
southern tip of Costa Rica down into Central America. There's slight plumage differences. Their voices are a little different, and then yeah, genetics. But there's a gap in Costa Rica. Um, I don't know how wide it is, but where there are in theory no gray hawks or gray lined hawks. And so once you get south of that gap, you get gray lined. But I went down to Panama last year and saw gray lined hawks, and they're very, very similar to gray hawks.
you're just looking at them and thinking, I know you.
Yeah, exactly. Even when they called, I was like, that sounds pretty similar. But
Yeah, that is kind of goofy how you have those regional species that are clearly different, and then they just decide whether they want to split or lump. The one that always gets me is the Myrtle yellow-rumped warbler versus the Audubon's yellow-rumped warbler with some pretty distinctive plumage differences, and
super
those
distinctive.
still go unsplit to this day.
Yeah, well, they were lumped. They still go lumped to this day.
Yeah. And then there's a Goldman's, I think, too, is another subspecies that looks even more unusual than those two.
Yeah, in Mexico, that thing looks wild.
Those are cool. I wish we could get some of those up here because they're really gorgeous birds.
Yeah, that
Do
would
you
be
have
awesome.
a most desired split or lump?
He does, you can tell.
No, I've never thought about it really. Just
What?
kind of like
For
whatever
for
decision.
people that might be unfamiliar, splitting is when you have one species they decide it's two, lumping is they had two, they're deciding it's now the same. Like they just lumped red poles. It's now
Yeah,
common and hoary are just known as red pole, and I think there was one other that was in there too.
yeah, lesser
Yeah.
from the Eurasia. Um, I've never really thought about it. It's kind of like whatever they decide. I'm just like, all right, that's the way the world is now, and I just move on.
Actually, that kind
I'm,
of seems like it fits your personality now that you
yeah,
mention it.
it's like I don't have time to spend thinking about,
Yeah, like just tell me the name of the thing I need to find and I'll go try to find
exactly.
it.
I'm more in favor of splitting than lumping, though, for sure.
Of course, of course. What kind of sick monster would be in favor of lumping?
The tough thing
Except
for
the Dowitchers. Lump them. Lump the
Yeah,
Dowitchers.
too
the
hard to tell
tough thing
apart.
with splits is with some, I think they split one of the shearwater species, and you need very specific photos to tell
Yeah,
which one it is. So if that's on your life list and you didn't have a photo to look back on, now
it's a
it's just
flat.
kind of like you don't know what it is anymore. So I think that's tough.
Um, we yeah encounter that here in Texas because they split Corey's and Scopolis shearwater, and they're very similar. We can have both in the Gulf, and I've seen both in the Gulf, but we mostly get Scopolis. But yeah, then everyone's just going back through their photos, being like, "Which one did I see?" And they're trying to like
Yeah.
retroactively, assign a species to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's a fool's errand to try to make your, 100th, 200th, or whatever bird be meaningful to you, because
Yeah,
chances are it's going to not be that in 5 years. So you
yeah.
sometimes encounter people that go, I'm saving that one for this number, and you might as well just not because,
Bam, house sparrow takes its place.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How much pelagic stuff is there out of Texas? Any? Do you guys have any pelagics?
Yeah, there's some, not a lot. There's kind of one group called Texas Pelagics that I think they just did one trip this year, and I went on it out of Port Aransas. I think they try for two or three, but pelagic trips in the Gulf can be pretty boring. Um, you can
Did
go
you guys
out.
see anything?
Yeah, you go out there. The Gulf is so shallow for a while, you have to really spend several hours getting out to where the continental shelf is, where you get some of those more pelagic species. But yeah, I mean, we saw Scopely shearwaters. You can go see bridled and sooty terns out there, which is a lot of fun. Bandrump storm petrels and sometimes Jaegers if you're lucky. Uh, so, but a lot of those birds are like there can be a bird and then 2 or 3 hours and then the next bird. It's not like
To bring a book or something
Got
is
to
yeah,
what
make
you're
sure you
saying.
don't, use the
like
bathroom or get seasick in that 1 5 minute window when you get your bird.
exactly. People are falling asleep all the time. But it's fun out there. We saw a sperm whale out there too on our last trip, so
Oh,
that
that's
was
That's
cool.
cool.
yeah. I compared it like this summer I also did a pelagic out of California, coastal California, which is where I'm from. And you go out there and there's just shearwaters everywhere. City shearwater.
Which one did you do?
I did one of Alvaro's
Okay.
trips out of Half Moon Bay. Yeah. And the marine life is crazy. And then I came back right after that and did the pelagic here in the Gulf, and it was just like crazy different.
Yeah, it sounds like it. We were talking to someone who does pelagics out of is it Indiana, Derek? On the Great Lakes it is,
On the
but
Great
Oh,
Lakes. They started
yeah.
doing more of them to kind of see what was out here. They did one for whatever Chicago's birding festival was, and they got like at least like seven Savin gulls, I
A
think.
lot of Sabin's gulls, which
Pretty
is a
close
pretty good
range,
bird.
but we were gonna do one, and then they had to pull the boat out. But I think the waves were supposed to be pretty wild.
okay.
Um, so next year they're planning on doing some more.
Wow. Well, that'll be cool. Have you
Yeah,
guys
Yeah, it
interesting.
feels like a toss of the dice. Like who knows? Maybe there's just a bunch of short-tailed shearwaters out there. I don't
That'd be
know.
funny if
right
there was
out
a
in the
hidden
middle?
colony of birds out there.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a lot like a Gulf pelagic in that way. It's kind of a gamble of whether you're going to see a lot or
I think
you might
so.
see something really cool, but you also might not.
Yeah, I'm hoping
Yeah.
there's at least stuff to look at, like long-tailed ducks and
Yeah, yeah.
scoters and things like that, because I do know that they get some pretty big rafts off the shore of
Okay.
some of the places that jut out into Lake Michigan and Superior a little bit more. So that'd be pretty neat just to see loads and loads of those sea ducks.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
Yeah. What other places do you like going, Bert? I mean, the Valley is obviously a great destination. Are there some other spots that you're really into in the country or elsewhere?
Yeah. So originally I'm from coastal California, from the Bay Area. And so I always love birding out there. I actually, yeah, Central California is great. I saw your video on the top places to bird, and I was very pleased that the Valley was number one, and then Central California also made the list.
Yeah, that was a good day for you, I bet.
Yeah, it was great. And then, yeah, I mean, Southeast Arizona is amazing, hard to beat. Every time I drive from Texas to California, I got to pass through Southeast Arizona, so spend a couple
Oh
days.
no, gotta
Yeah, I
drive through
know.
Yeah.
Arizona again.
There's always some cool bird to chase out there. Um,
Yeah, we felt pretty good about that list. We put a lot of research into it and have experienced most of those places, so we felt pretty confident. I think that the only thing that people kind of could make a case for is putting something from the Northeast on there. So a lot of
yeah,
people
Some
love
people,
New Jersey and Cape
yeah,
May.
people love Cape May.
Hey, May is the
No,
spot I
funny
thought of.
enough, nobody was like McGee Marsh. I think they kind of
Oh yeah,
understand. It's kind of a seasonal thing, and you can kind of get that elsewhere. But Cape May was the only one people were kind of like, "How dare you?"
And we've been to Cape May, we just weren't there at the peak migration. And we
yeah,
kind of felt like a lot of the stuff you can get in Cape May, you can also get in other parts of the country because that's, a lot of warbler migration, things like that. They do have some cool oceanic species, but
yep,
we thought Central California with some of the species you get out there, you can't really get in very many other spots. So that
yeah,
was kind of our rationale for it.
yeah, absolutely. There's some just like the mix of going from the coast and then all the way up to the mountains in Central California is pretty unique.
Yeah, there's so much habitat out there that's different because we went out there with our friend Rachel, who lives out there and is a guide.
Okay,
And we did the ocean stuff, Point Lobos. We did Sierra
yeah,
Nevada mountains. We did the scrub habitat, the creosote scrub, I think it was, where you can get, what was it we got out there
Lacan's
even?
thrasher,
Lacan's
Bell. I think it's
thrasher.
oh yeah,
Bell's sparrow out there too.
Yep, bell sparrow and Lacan's thrasher. So the habitat's so varied, which is unique.
yeah.
You can help me out with this one, but I was thinking about the top five like migration hotspots because people love Cape May for that. Like Cape May, McGee Marsh is really good. I'm assuming High Island, probably South Padre. You'd have to put both of those on.
I would think so, yeah. I mean, especially, well, I love South Padre, and I'm biased. South Padre is great because there aren't many tall trees and the birds are like no less than 15
That
feet
is,
up.
yeah, it's true. I didn't really think about that.
So you get some awesome like blackbirding and warblers right in front of your face. Whereas High Island probably has more birds and even more diversity of migrants going through because it's a little further east. So they get some things that we don't get in huge numbers. But yeah, I think you got to put both of those on there, and maybe something in southern Florida or something. They get a lot
Yeah,
of
almost maybe like a
migrants.
Pivetto Woods in Louisiana or one of those, or like
Yeah,
Grand Isle maybe. Yeah, there's so many good spots.
yeah. Dauphin Island too
Yeah, Dolphin Island's cool.
there's a lot around the Gulf. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
the whole
most
Gulf Coast
definitely.
could just be like
Yeah.
one.
You can do a Cape May redemption on that one. You can put the Cape May high
So
on the list
here's
there.
top five birding festivals. I think Cape May probably squeaks on maybe five because
Yeah.
these aren't in order, but you got biggest week, Rio Grande, Space Coast, Southeast Arizona, and then you're left with the San Diego one or the Cape May one. And I don't know. I've never been to either, so I
Are there
don't know which
two in
one's
Cape
better.
May? I thought there
There's
was
a
one
spring and a
during.
fall.
Yeah,
Well, you got to get them to get you out there sometime so you
that's
can
true.
do your
That'd
research.
be cool. Yeah. Have them like have them both like say we're gonna put one of you guys on a list. We need to have the best experience at one, and then just go to both and see.
Just have them like, yeah, like treat you like royalty and court you and be like, this is why we're better.
That's the goal. That's
Yeah.
that's the dream.
And then
We
like
we
give
want to
the
be
number
treated like
five spot to
royalty.
somebody else. Some
Yeah.
like
Ooh,
Like you didn't, it wasn't good enough.
yeah, Laredo Birding Festival,
Try again next
Texas.
I can't even think of another big one other than those two that you mentioned.
I'm sure there's more out there, but I feel
I'm
like
sure
those are
there's
the
a lot
most
of
well-known
smaller
ones.
ones or species specific ones because I know there's a vulture fest in Illinois. I'm sure there's got to be something with sandhill crane migration as
There's a
well.
great Midwest Crane Fest, I'm pretty sure.
Called it.
There's a
Yeah.
we have the Whooping Crane Festival down here in February. And then there's some prairie chicken festivals too. Those are just ones that come to mind. But yeah, those are more species specific and not yeah, they're kind of different.
Yeah. Have you been to either of those? The Cape May or the San Diego?
No, I haven't been to any other birding festivals other than ours.
So you're
He likes
saying
to
number
stick close
one
to
then,
home.
right?
Yeah, well, we have a very small spring migration festival called Spring Chirp too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's much smaller than the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival, but it's fun too
I need
in
to get
April.
your honest opinion on something. So obviously the Rio Grande Valley always gets a lot of birders, but during the festival it's kind of that condensed time frame. Do you look forward to that 1 week every year, or is it kind of, oh man, it's a little much compared to usual? Which do you prefer, during the festival or after before, I guess? Be honest.
Yeah, no, it's one of the best weeks of the year for sure. Like, there's birders everywhere. Usually something really good is found. This year was not quite that way, but you know, it's just like it's so fun. It's exhausting, as you guys know. And this year, me and my friend Javi led the pre-festival trip, so we were just guiding every day for 8 days, um, and yeah, so I mean, it was just an exhausting, full-on week, but yeah, it's one of the best weeks of the year.
I think I say one of the best weeks of my life.
Well, we'll see. Maybe.
Like, hopefully it gets even better from here instead of we peaked at the Rio Grande Birding Festival.
Yeah, maybe next year's will be the best week.
That's true.
Yeah.
Is there a next bird that you're thinking will show up in the valley that hasn't been there in a while? Like what's due?
Yeah, there's actually there's a lot of like rare species that I feel like we haven't gotten in a while. Like a masked duck or like a northern jacana or white-throated thrush. Well, there was a white-throated thrush not all that long ago, but there's some species that I feel like we've gotten like last year, for example, we got good push of all those rare birds that you guys saw a bunch of them. Um, but some of those species, I feel like it's just been a while. Yeah, and as far as like a first for the valley or something like that. I don't really know, but
One of the coolest ones that I saw had records in Texas would be Jabiru.
yeah, yeah, we
They're
have some
like
boots.
these massive storks, and I saw historically come up to Texas, which would just be insane.
Yeah, late summer is most of the records are from like August, early September, and they come up on really wet years, I think is the theme. But yeah, that would be awesome. I've seen those guys in Costa Rica. They're massive.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
You would
Uh,
think there would be some different things that would come up since it seems that everything is pushing a little bit more north in general, or things from the north are receding back into that part of the country or continent. So I would think that there would be a continued push of new species moving up.
Yeah, I mean the birds around here are definitely changing. As like what breeds here, for example, what winters here too. Like we have wintering warblers here that in theory should go a lot further south. If you look at a range map or historically or something, like yellow warblers now winter in the valley, especially around Resaca's and stuff. It's not uncommon to see them. Um, and then in terms of birds like pushing north in their breeding range, like grayhawks are an example of that. We really think grayhawks are expanding their range northward, and we have more of them in the valley than there used to be. Um, like if you talk to somebody who was here, 20, 30 years ago, yeah, there were grayhawks, but you went to a couple of specific places to see them. There were just like a handful of them. You would go to Benson or you would go to Anzalduas or Santa Ana and you would go see the grayhawks. And now, especially with our urban grayhawks, you can just drive around a street in Harlingen or McAllen or something, and there can be a grayhawk on the wire just right as you drive by.
Yeah,
So
that's what's great about the valley too, is that all those things that you don't get to see will just be on telephone poles and
yeah,
wires. You know,
especially our
you
raptors.
Yeah, you're down there psyched because you want to see a white-tailed hawk, and then all of a sudden there's just one as you're driving on the freeway just sitting up there. That's
Yeah,
pretty unique.
and you like don't have time to stop and turn around and look at it.
Yeah.
yeah.
What's
That
a
happens too much.
species? Oh, what were you saying?
No, nothing. Nothing. Go ahead.
Oh, what's a species that you don't see as often as you used to in the valley? Something that maybe has kind of vanished from that area?
Well, I think I probably have not been living in the valley long enough to answer that question.
Oh, okay. We'll
I've only
default it
been
to
here a
someone
few
else.
years. Yeah, you can
What's
ask.
up with the lack of blue buntings? I don't
What is
think there
up with the lack
was
of
like
bunting?
one seen.
I like the way you asked that as if he was the controller of them. Hey, what are you
He's the
doing with
finder,
He's like
you know?
Well,
the guy that controls the US Fed. You're like, what's the deal with the amount of dollars in the economy?
trying to encourage them in, but they're not coming. Um, yeah, we had a bunch last year. Well, a bunch. We had a handful of them last year. They'd pop up in random places in the winter, but so far this winter there's nothing. I had one in April at Sable Palm Sanctuary that was a male blue bunting that was singing, so I thought that was fun. Wondering if it was maybe trying to look for a mate or something, but then it disappeared. So
Hmm.
hung out for a
That's the
couple
one we
days.
still need in the valley. That's the one
Oh,
kind
it
of
is?
valley specialty rare bird that we still need to find.
Yeah. Well, they're
Help
really,
us.
really hard. Like they just are way deep in the thorn scrub and just skulking way back there and really hard to get a look at. Usually I can usually you hear them more than you see them.
Yeah, I've heard if they're not coming to somebody's like feeder, they're
Yeah.
really a pain to try to get.
Yeah. The ones I've seen the best have been at like water features where you sit there for like 2 or 3 hours and then the blue bunting comes out for 45 seconds, takes a bath, and then goes away.
Sounds lovely. We
Yeah.
had a heck of a time trying to find the crimson collared grosbeak when we were there last. There was that female that was on Frontera Audubon,
Yeah.
and that thing was really challenging because the whole area is scrubby. So you would maybe hear it coming from some direction. And what's interesting about the valley for everyone listening is that around here in Wisconsin and the Midwest, if there's a rare bird that gets reported that day, your odds of finding it are very high. If it's still around, you'll probably find it if you go there. In the valley, when something gets reported, you're probably too late because it has now switched locations to where it was found last. So the gray-collared Becard, it was like that. The crimson-collared grosbeak was like that. All of the tropical parulas, it's like that. They'll show up in a findable spot for a little bit, and it feels like if you miss that window, you're just out of luck, and you just have to go there and kind of be in the right place at the right time. But yeah, that bird was difficult.
That one was difficult. Yeah. through my guiding, I took a lot of people to try and see both the Bacard and the crimson colored grosbeak, but just kind of like sit in the middle of Frontera Audubon, and then when I heard it, just like start walking as fast as I could in the direction that it came from, and a lot of times you just end up hearing it and not seeing it because the habitat is so dense in there.
Yeah, Frontera is weird because it's like you're so closed in because there's all that fencing. It feels like you're just in a big maze. And you're
It
like,
does,
it's
yeah.
not that huge. Like you should be able to
It's not,
find
no.
whatever's in this property, but it's stuff can just disappear.
Yeah. Yeah, stuff just kind of like the Bacard was a great example, the gray color
Oh,
Bacard, because and the rose sort of Bacards we have too in the winter, like they're oftentimes silent in the winter and they'll just like pop up on a perch. Somebody will see it, they'll shout, everybody will come running, and then it just goes away into the thorn scrub, and that was
You're
it.
out of luck for the rest of the day.
I
yeah,
mean, you
pretty
guys, you
much.
guys
Good
looked
luck.
multiple days for that, didn't you?
Oh
Yeah, it
yeah,
was
three
tough.
days. Three
3 days.
days for the gray
Yeah.
collared Bacard.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
That was actually kind of funny though, because why am I blanking on the name of that place? That it
Resaca.
was
Osaka?
Resaca. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't think of it. Resaca had three birds that we wanted to see. It had tropical parula, it had the roadside hawk, and then it had the gray collared Picard. So every day we would go and get one. So the first day we got the roadside, and then the next day I think we got the tropical parula, and then finally the last day we got the gray collared. So at least there was cool stuff to see there. But it
Yeah,
was we always planned on finding it and then moving on to something else. So it would be, we'll go find the gray collared Picard and then we'll go get the fantail warbler and then we'd spend all morning looking for the gray collared Picard. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's the tough thing about chasing birds, and that's one of the tough things about being a guide too. Is like how much time do you spend looking for one bird, or how do you balance? Because I would do the same thing. We would go to Resaca in the morning, and then we go look for the fantail. But it's like, how much time do you want to spend there before you give up, before
I
you
think
move
we
on?
saw you most days there too. You would always be there with somebody looking for
I
the
was there
same
a lot
stuff.
last year.
And we
Yeah.
would just be like, "Hey, Evan, you find it?" And you'd be like, "Nah."
Yeah. Like, but there's a tropical parula over there.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
yeah, exactly. You're like, "Have you heard about the fantail warbler I found over at the campus?" So you do a lot of guiding down there. Do you
Yeah.
have some really funny or entertaining guiding stories from all of the times you've taken people out?
Um, man,
He's filtering through the ones he can
I
say on
know.
a Zoom meeting.
I'm trying to think of like how to say it and not like, not in a mean way or something.
This has got
Um,
to be a good story then if that's what's taking the mental processing.
yeah, I mean, the real answer is like, no, not really. It's not that exciting being a guy down here, like for the most part.
I feel like it would be pretty exciting. Like up here, we're very limited with like our rarities. I feel
Yeah.
like it'd be fun to show people like their first green jay and stuff, things you can get pretty easily. But
Okay,
like
yes.
here, people are
Yeah.
looking for like snowy owls and things that take a little effort. You're just like,
Heartland's warbler.
hey, look at that green jay. And people are like, oh my gosh, a green jay. Like
People probably
Evan's the
think you're an
best guide
absolute
ever.
beast. Yeah, they
That
probably
is
think
true.
that you are the best guide when you just go, I know where to find those green jays, and then there's just seven of them surrounding them.
Is you go into the parking lot at Resaca and there's like 35 of them on the feeders. And you're like, I
Well, maybe
found
don't give away all your guiding secrets.
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean that part never gets old. Like showing people, new birds and green jays and Altamira orioles and just like reliving, because that was me at one point too when I first came to the valley, and I was just like blown away by all these different birds that I had seen in field guides, right? But I never seen in real life. So that part never gets old. But what does get old is I guide all different kinds of people, and a lot of them are, have a list of certain birds they want to see. And so a lot of last year, for example, was, you go see the rarest birds, the gray colored Bacard, the roadside hawk, and then the fantail, and then the crimson colored grosbeak. And what does get old is doing that, 3, 4 days a week
Mhm.
for several months and just going to the same spots. I got really good at finding the birds. So, so that was good, but it just gets really repetitive.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like you'd almost want to tell them like, hey, just all come on the same day. We're gonna go
Yeah,
find
well,
them
we
guard.
started doing that, offering yeah, like group tours. We called them Rarity Roundup tours, and we would go to all
That's a good
the
name.
spots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
did the festival take that name first, or did you guys take that name first? Because we had
Uh,
rarity roundup tours at the festival.
that's true.
Is
It,
is there
it,
beef?
the festival probably took it first. probably coined that. Yeah.
I find that
Um,
around here, something we get sometimes when people want to find birds is they don't understand when the bird is actually going to be around. So
Mm.
they'll, say something like, I'm going to be there in December. Can we find Kirtland's warblers? Or,
Yeah.
not
who's
that
asked you
egregious.
that? I don't think I've ever
I've
heard
had a
that.
couple, not that egregious. It'll be like March, how can we find Blackburnian warblers? And, you won't.
Back in May. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that happens all the time here. People want to see a migrant in January or something, and it's just not going to happen. And then a lot of people also, they'll put on their list of species they want to see, like a really like a mass duck or a jacana or something that's really rare. But South Texas has this reputation for having those rare birds, but it's not like
Yeah.
those rare birds are always here. So that happens a lot.
Yeah, that's very true because for the rarity roundup this time around, a lot of people said that they came to see stuff like the
Roadside Hawk was one.
Fantail warbler, roadside hawk. Yeah, the stuff that was there last year that's not normally there. So people
Yeah,
saw last year that people had it during the festival and then expected to see it again. So it kind of led to some of the expectations not getting met because their expectations were extremely high.
So
yeah.
next year it's gonna flip. Where there's gonna
Yeah,
be
Well,
all this rare stuff, and they're
we
not
want
gonna
to see the
expect it.
hermit warbler, and then
hey,
when
that's my
there's
bird.
something like a
Yeah, you
jacana there.
found. Did you find that first?
Yeah, yeah,
He's the warbler
that's
guy.
He's the
like
Batman of birding. He's a hero we don't deserve.
right.
He's the
No,
Greyhawk.
that's cemetery where the love it. I am getting my gray hair coming in on the side.
See, you're becoming the hero.
He's
Slowly I
becoming
will
his
become a
research
gray hawk.
subject, which
Yeah.
happens to all scientists. Yeah.
That's true.
And I can just join their society.
You already talked to him. Just go
Yeah.
sit on a telephone pole and
I know what they say. But
yeah.
yeah, the cemetery where the hermit warbler is one that I bird regularly. It's a really great migrant trap. And then it has nice flocks of wintering warblers. They move around the Texas ebonies, which is an endemic tree species to South Texas and Northeast Mexico, and wintering warblers love it in those. And yeah, the hermit warbler was there. I found it in December of last, like a year ago, basically. And then it left in March, but then it came back in October, and that was awesome.
Same bird, I'm assuming.
I would think so, yeah, but who knows for sure.
It is actually really interesting about birds because I didn't recognize this until we started birding more, but you do get the same, I'm assuming it has to be the same bird coming to places over and over out of their range, which means
Yeah,
that that bird is making that same trip over and over. I always assumed it was just here's the general range, they go down, they come back up to some other spot. The site fidelity for some of these is pretty crazy because in Wisconsin, prairie warbler is a fairly rare species. There was one that would come to the exact same spot in one of the forests we have around here for something like 7 or more years, which not only means that little bird is surviving those 7 years, but it
yeah,
for some reason feels the need to come back to the same exact spot, which is
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you see that all the time with wintering birds down here, and like with some of the banding efforts that have been going on here in the valley. Like one of our banders down here, he'll catch a lot of wintering birds, like orange-crowned warblers, for example, in the exact same net, between winters, between years, and it's just like they're coming back right to the same spot. It's pretty interesting.
With
You'd
like
think they'd
the
wise up.
with like the prairie warbler, it must be like a bachelor or a bachelorette that just like doesn't want to pair up. It's like I don't want to settle down. I'm going back to that spot where it's only me there.
He's like, maybe this year there will be a female there.
Yeah,
You
it's
gotta
like
wonder if they're like,
I have
what am I
no
doing wrong?
competition.
Yeah. He's
This
like, it's
whole
great. There's no
territory is
other
mine.
males.
All of this.
Yeah, everything I can see.
Yeah, for sure. Um, what's your favorite bird species?
Greyhawk.
If Greyhawk's number one, you got to pick a second favorite.
Okay. Yeah,
And if it's
Greyhawk's
not
probably number
Greyhawk,
one. Yeah, I know. Um, yeah, Greyhawk's probably number one. Just like doing all the field work I've done on them, and I put cameras up at their nests, so I have like really intimate photos of things that are happening on Greyhawk nests. That's how I figure out what they're eating. So I put the cameras up at the nests, and then you can see what prey the adults are bringing the young to eat. So yeah, that's how I'm describing their diet down here.
do you get attached?
Do I get attached?
Because
I'm
we were
attached.
talking to your girlfriend down in at the festival, and she was talking about her tortoises she was researching and how she would get attached to the tortoises. But I
Yep.
thought I remember you saying you weren't that attached to the Greyhawks.
I don't name the Greyhawks.
They don't even have like a sign like G5 or something.
Some of them do. Some of them have color bands on them, so they'll be like black 4/2 4 or something like that. But
So
yeah, I don't.
you have a live cam on them?
No, didn't do any live cams.
I was
I
gonna
just
say it'd be cool to have like a live cam on a Greyhawk nest and put it on the
yeah,
channel or something. That'd be neat.
that would be very cool.
Then someone could name it.
You could have
Yeah.
people do your research for you. Be like, document what prey they're bringing and send
Oh,
it to
that's
me on a
brilliant.
spreadsheet.
I would love to do that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, then we would have to name them because people would be invested and
Yeah,
we'd name all the chicks. But yeah, my favorite bird other than a greyhawk for a long time has been the painted redstart.
it's a good
That's a
one.
good pick. Is
Yeah,
there one that you really need to see for your life list still that you want to get? What's the next one that you want to actually go find and chase?
I mean, I chase just about anything I don't have on my life list. Yeah, what would be I mean, there's nothing really left in Texas for me to get on my life list. Oh, Connecticut warbler. That's the big one.
Oh,
That's
that's a
the
tough
only
one.
breeding That's the only breeding, warbler that breeds in the US that I don't have. Um,
That's cool.
yeah, they don't come through Texas. They tend to go more east when they migrate, so I've never really been in a spot where I could see them.
You could go to the Saxon Bog in summer.
Yeah, I think I'd rather go in winter though. Try and see a
You're
hawk.
not going to find the Connecticut warblers there, though.
I know.
Unless you're
Unless,
just that good.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll find. But hawk owl, northern hawk owl would also be on that list,
Oh, nice.
and gerfalcon too. Gerfalcon and
Boreal
That's
owl?
boreal owl would be great.
I feel like jeers have been really tough in the Midwest
I believe
lately.
they're suppressed as well, so that makes it harder.
But I don't
Yes.
even like I don't see any pictures
Yeah.
being posted with undisclosed location or anything. So
Yeah.
maybe they're just staying way up. I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't even think about them most of the time, and until we have a conversation like this, and then I'm remembering that I haven't seen one since the first year we started birding.
Yeah, yeah.
You guys saw one in
We
Wisconsin?
did. It came into the middle of Wisconsin, which was a pretty odd place for it, and it was
Well,
hunt. What?
not odd because of the food source though.
Well, yeah, it was hunting the greater prairie chickens that live there,
Oh,
which was not really the best case scenario, but it
yeah.
spent most of the winter there, I think. And
Yeah, it
then
was pretty cool.
we
That
saw it
was
for 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, that was one that we probably didn't appreciate as much as we would have if you're like, you're not going to see another one for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the last, diurnal raptor that nests in North America that I need to see. So
I like how you have them by categories. Like that's the last such and
Yeah.
such that I need.
trying to close them all out. But no, I mean obviously I love raptors, so I I want to see as many as I can.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I was trying to narrow this down. I feel like this is an exceptionally tough top five list to make because stuff does change. What are your top five places to bird in South Texas?
Oh, in the valley specifically?
Um,
Or
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't count like Santa Margarita just because it's like, more private. Probably,
okay,
I don't
so
know. What do you think, Raj? Should we count like Salanino, like that stuff, or just go more central to the valley?
Um, let's count anything kind of within Valley range.
that would include San Niño. It'd
Yeah,
be,
sure.
the four counties. Top five. Let's see. I would put Salanino on. This isn't in order. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I would put Salanino on there because it's if you can't count Santa Margarita Ranch, then that's kind of like getting on the river up in Starr County. It's kind of like a unique spot, and obviously, lots of good birds have been there. That's where the crane hawk was last year. Rose-throated Bacard's nest up there. Morlet seed eaters are there. It's a really cool spot. Um, and then Santa Ana is one of my favorites. Um, I love Resaca. It's um, it's close to where I live. It's like 15 minutes, and so you can go in there and you can do a huge hike in Resaca de la Palma and see all sorts of cool birds. And it's a great spot for wintering warblers too, and tropical parulas and things like that. And obviously rare stuff like you guys saw last year. And let's see, that's three. I guess you got to put South Padre Island on there.
Ooh, that's tough for your last one then. You got two heavy hitters left that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
know. I'm thinking about them too. Um, but yeah, I would put South Padre Island on there for migration and vagrants. Just it's just like such a crazy vagrant trap. Um, and then I think last would I'd go with Estero Llano Grande State Park,
So
and
leaving Benson off then.
I would leave Benson off the list.
Wow.
I think Benson, we have a little bit higher view than most other people because when we were there the first time, well, the first time I was in the valley, was that your first time too? No, it
No.
wasn't. My first time in the Valley, Benson had rose-throated Picard, and then it also had the kites. So it
Yeah,
was a go-to spot then. So we were there twice, I think. So I
it,
think that now that the kites aren't really there, and I don't even know if a Picard is there, there's just not as much to see.
yeah. I and Benson in the 90s, 2000s, and you know back then before they closed the campsites and the driving around in there. It used to attract more rare birds because people would put out seed and food and water and stuff, and all these rare birds would be in there. And so Benton got really famous, I think, for that. And um, I don't know, my experiences in Benton just haven't been. I've had great experiences with hook-billed kites and stuff in there, rose-throated Picards, and there's been other rare stuff, but I think I would rather go to a place like Estero where you can, see the waterfowl and water birds, and then also have probably just as good of a chance of seeing something really rare.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like your opinion changes at these places depending on what you're looking for or what's rare. Because one time when we were down, there was like nothing reported at Resaca, but we went there with Justin to
Yeah.
try to find tropical perulas. And my opinion of Resaca was like, oh, it's just like it's Resaca de la Palma, it's the state park, and then everything was there. And my opinion of Resaca totally changed. I'm like, it's this magical place where there's all these rare birds. So it
Yeah.
is funny how they'll go to different places. And I think two kind of underrated spots, like if those spots we talked about are your like wide receiver one, these are like your slot receivers, like your reliable other spots you can go to and have a good time, or is the National Butterfly Center and then Edinburgh Scenic Wetlands.
Yeah, both of those are also, if you want to see kingfishers, scenic
Mhm.
wetland, it's probably the best place to try and see all three of them. And then the Butterfly Center is great, obviously, and
Super
right next to them.
accessible. I feel like that's
Super
like the best
accessible.
thing is you can do a loop real quick and kind of see what you want to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just back to Resaca, like 2 years ago, before last winter, I would go in the winter. I guess that was winter 22 to 23, and I'd be the only person in there because there weren't any rare birds. It would just be me walking around. And then it's just like such a crazy change from that winter to last winter, where you go and all of a sudden there's like 50 people in there, all looking for the Bacard or the roadside hawk
Mhm.
or something. And it's like, yeah, it just like goes to show of like when the rare birds are in a place, then that place is the place to be, right? Resaca was the place to be, and it's still really high in everyone's mind. But if you asked a lot of people in the valley 2 years ago, I don't think Resaca would be on all that many people's lists of top five.
Yeah,
'Cause
the
there's
accessible
not what,
area in it too isn't even that much. It's not a massive place. So it's
yeah,
weird to think about how many rare birds are there and how difficult they were to find given there's like one road you walk and
yeah,
it's the tram trail and then there's a few other trails and that's about it.
And that just
yeah.
makes you like think about how many rare birds just go unfound because they're just thick in the brush somewhere or at somebody's backyard or just not paying attention or just some other random tract of land.
I think about that all the time, Derek. Yep.
So
It's
I
like
think
it
if I
about
wakes
that
can
when
me up
find
at
driving.
night.
if I can find a fan-tailed warbler, just walking around my university campus here, it's like, what else could you find? Some random patch of habitat somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah. I saw that they added Red Lord and Yellow-headed Amazon to the provisional list. ABA did. Does that mean those are countable down in the valley or still not?
Um, to be honest, I don't really keep up with all the provisional and exotic and all
Right, they
those
just make it and you just
classifications.
go with
Yeah,
it,
they just
right?
make it and
Yeah, it's
he
like
just
it's
goes
like
with
that.
mine.
Whatever shows up on my eBird list shows up on my eBird list.
Even
Yeah.
the red jungle fowl, escapee, mark it down as a lifer.
not that one. No, except for when I was in Singapore, I would mark that down because I guess they're native or something. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's always
Oh,
changing too. So
Yeah.
you guide for Nature Ninja Birding Tours, which is Tiffany's company, and we had her on the channel, man, maybe a couple of years now.
been a
Yeah.
while.
But you know, we've seen you in action, would definitely recommend you to people. How can they get in touch if they want to do a tour with you?
Yeah. So the easiest way would be at natureninjabirding.com. You can go on there and see all the trips we're offering, and you can ask for me to guide you down here in the valley, and I'd love to take anyone out who's listening.
And you're doing
Uh,
some international too, right?
that's right. Yeah. So in January, I'll be leading 2 trips to Costa Rica. We still have one space left on one of those trips. But all that information is online. We're trying to um, get trips going to Colombia in the summer next year, so be on the lookout for that too. And
That sounds
and then,
cool.
yeah, Tiffany will be leading other Nature Ninja Birding Tours trips to different places next year too, internationally.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Awesome. I mean, there's so much to see in all these different places,
yeah,
you know, and I feel like when we started, we didn't want to spend a lot of money, of course, you know, so it's kind of like getting a guide. You're like, do I need to? Do I not? But I feel
yeah,
like anytime I've been with a guide, they just have such a thorough knowledge of the area that you're so much more efficient
yeah,
and you're not making mistakes that you might make if you didn't know. Like we've gone to places where we're like, oh, we'll go find this. It's closed. You know,
yeah,
something a local would know, like, oh yeah, they're actually like randomly closed Tuesday and Wednesday and open the rest of the week or things like that.
yeah,
So I feel like with a lot of stuff you don't need a guide, but if you can afford it and you have like the time to do it, it's normally very helpful. I don't think I've had too many experiences where I'm like, I would rather be on my own doing this.
yeah,
Especially if the guide's fun.
Yeah, if the guide's fun.
If the guide's awful, then it's not fun.
yeah.
So everyone listening can judge if Evan seems fun or not based on this interaction.
God. Well, I hope I am. I don't know. Yeah.
Is there a next place that you want to go birding? Like, you know, Sax Zim or something?
I really do. Yeah, I want to go to Saxon Bog in the winter, see some of those owls. Yeah, like great gray owl too. I haven't seen. There's a lot of international places I want to go to, especially South America and Ecuador and Colombia. But yeah, that'll happen at some point.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin, of course. Sorry, I should have said
Oh, of
Wisconsin.
course.
Wisconsin's got to be
Have
the
you
number
been
one.
here?
I've never been to Wisconsin.
Oh, you
Dude,
gotta come.
we get Connecticut warblers too.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
Okay.
spring and fall we normally get a couple that are hanging out
Yeah.
like on the lakefront or something.
I've been all around. I've been to Minnesota and Iowa and Michigan and Ohio, but
How dare you?
It's like he was purposely avoiding it.
I know, right?
no, don't be
What's
crazy.
kind of weird is that I think the biggest thing people see now in Wisconsin is the great tit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I-
that seems to be
Yeah.
I've seen some people that have commented that they needed it for the ABA come here and get it, which is funny.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone keeps their own lists, you know.
Yeah, well, it's that's another one that's on the provisional list now. I feel like the ABA is adopting more of like whatever eBird counts as countable, so it's kind of shifting.
That's just like Evan. Whatever eBird
Yeah,
counts,
right. So,
I'll go get it.
All those decisions, I don't, yeah, they're all happening at a level way above us. So just whatever
Those
happens,
are
happens.
decisions for Justin Leclerc.
Absolutely. Yeah.
so it's funny because I feel like Ryan is very like whenever there's a taxonomic change, he's just like, I don't like it. It doesn't make sense, kind of deal.
I do
And
almost never like it.
yeah, he's normally not like, yeah, I agree with it. He's just like, oh, why are they splitting this? Why are they doing this?
Well, they usually seem kind of flippant to me because I don't know why, but they just do.
I feel like
We talked
they don't
about
describe it a lot. You know, it's just kind of like, well, we found that they're different. So
they go science has proven they're different or science has proven they're the same. And they've been different species for how long or the same species for how long, I don't know. And then what gets me, I think, most is that there's been a bunch of times that things have been split and then lumped and then split again and then
That
lumped
happens a
again.
lot.
And you know, if they're gonna keep flip-flopping, just pick one and go with it.
Yeah. And in general,
You feel me.
well, I think, if you really just go read the papers, that people put a lot of work into a lot of these splits and lumps and a lot of genetic work, especially these days. Like you can't propose anything without having genetics involved, and so people are learning a lot.
We talked about the lack of funding, and it kind of makes me feel like if you funded a look into every species, you could probably find a bunch of different ones that they could theoretically split.
Yeah, I know there's a project going on to get full genotypes on all the raptors out there and
Hmm.
see what's going on. So a lot of that work is going on right now, but we'll see what they come up with.
Yeah, it's
Doing
interesting.
every bird would be crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I think is interesting is all the species that definitely look like they derived from the same species. So,
Yeah,
red-bellied woodpecker, Gila woodpecker, golden-fronted woodpecker all look like they definitely at some point had a common ancestor. I'm assuming they had to have. So at some point they became
Just
different enough.
woodpecker and then
yeah,
branched off.
Pale-bellied woodpecker.
yeah. And then well, you go south of the border, and there's a lot more similar looking ones too.
Yeah, that's true.
Get them
Or
a little
like
bit.
gray heron and great blue heron, you'd have to think those are from the same species at some point.
Yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like that must be like they were connected land masses, right? And then,
Yeah,
over time, yeah, I'm assuming that's what that
So
is
that's pretty
from.
interesting. I mean, they did that with barn owl now. The barn owl, even though it looks pretty much the same, has been split into a
House
bunch of
wren
different
got
species. Yep.
moved
house round.
into it. I
That's
haven't really
the
heard people calling them northern house wren, but
I
I
mean,
think
it
we have
feels
the like
weird.
northern.
It does
Feels
feel
bad.
weird. I'll
Yeah.
probably still keep calling them house wren.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you're gonna end up like one of those people that still says solitary vireo. And I'd be like, that guy's old. He still
Yeah,
calls it a
exactly.
regular house wren.
Well, especially with all the changes that are likely in our future as birders. It's, gonna still keep calling things Cooper's Hawks for the rest of my life, or am I gonna be able to
That's a
make the
good
change? I don't
question
know.
because when we started birding, long-tailed duck was already long-tailed duck. So to
Yeah.
us, it's always been long-tailed duck. Oh yeah, long-tailed duck. But then there's people that still call it, old squaw. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you run into a lot of that. Um, we'll see. I'm sure we will be like that when we're old. There'll be some species that whose names we just hold on to.
yeah, I'll probably just stop trying to do taxonomic updates and just be like you and be like, whatever you bird says, I have it on my list.
It's easier that way.
It's you've seen like the chill guy memes going around.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like Evan's a chill guy. He just calls it whatever eBird tells him to call it.
Yeah.
So before we sign off here, what's your most memorable birding story?
Oh, well, I mean, probably finding the fan-tailed warbler. I mean, there's quite a few that come to mind, but yeah, that's probably my most memorable and like my the best birding moment of my life of finding this warbler in this place that I bird all the time, just like right in my local patch, and having it be first record for the valley, second record for the state, and just like freaking out basically by myself when I when I found it, when I took a
Did you
picture
want to
of
just
it.
tell everybody? You're like, you
I
got to get
did tell
over here. Yeah.
everyone. I like texted people, and then I put it out on our local WhatsApp rare bird alerts, and basically was just freaking out.
Yeah.
Did people recognize you then when they, introduced themselves and found out that you were Evan Farese? Did they go,
Okay.
"Thank you so much for finding
Did
the
you did you
fantail"?
just hang out by it? So like, yeah, I found it.
I
I
forget.
found that bird, that
No,
life you just
because
got.
the first day I was the only person who saw it, and everybody was like, "Oh no, it's gone." But then a couple people saw it the next day, and then eventually we learned a little bit more about like where it likes to hang out. And then people were seeing it regularly. But yeah, the first day a ton of people came to look, but nobody else saw it, which was a terrible feeling. I
Hmm.
Did you
was like,
feel
oh,
like you're like, did I really see it?
yeah, exactly. I was
Do
like,
I
kept
have
looking at
proof?
my picture, being
Yeah.
like, I took this, right?
You
It's
see it
just
one day and it's a fantail warbler, then the next day you look again and it's a yellow warbler, and you're like,
Yeah.
ah.
Sorry, everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Any last minute lifer stories?
Just general stories about
Well, so
life.
I had a crazy one with a sage thrasher the other day where like we had one in Wisconsin. Me and my friend decided we were leaving, and then there was an oil lead in my car, so I stopped to put oil in. And after I was done with that, he like had driven off and stopped and yelled that like they had just seen it, so I got to go see it. So that's
Oh,
like it wasn't a lifer, but it was a state bird. But like just stuff like that where it just seems
Last
to
minute
like
state bird doesn't have that same ring
no,
to
it was
it.
a last minute lifer for Bill, my friend though.
Oh,
So
okay. Sure.
it counts. But anything like that.
um,
You just find them all immediately.
I feel
No,
like it's
not
got
at
to be
all.
last second state bird, by the way, for you. It was a last minute lifer for Bill, last second state bird for you.
Okay, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, it's got the alliteration there. I
Yeah.
mean, I had some moments like that, like with the Kalima warbler in West Texas, of like everybody was hanging out in a spot where it had recently been seen, and then I walked off to, look for it on my own, and then I came back to that spot and everybody was gone. And somebody was like, "Oh yeah, they just saw it." And then I waited and waited, the bird never showed up again. And then I had to go back down, and the next day I had to come back up, and then I saw it eventually. But yeah, I mean, that's probably the closest thing I have to like almost missing a bird and then
That's a
finally get.
brutal one when
Yeah.
you leave and come back, especially if they're all like laughing and having fun. You're like, what happened? You're like, we just saw it. Like, we
No,
had a
the
great time.
That's the
worst
thing.
part is they were gone. I was like, "Oh, what happened?" I wasn't gone for that long. I was gone for like 20 minutes or something. And I came back, everybody was gone.
Yeah. Did they just all go back down?
I guess they saw it, and then once the bird left, they left.
Mm.
Dang.
Yeah.
There were no survivors.
Yeah, just me sitting there looking for a Kalima warbler still. But
Well, cool. Thanks so much for hanging out and taking the time to talk about your research and guiding and stuff. One more time for people, where can they go? What can they go to learn more about your research, or is any of that online?
not yet. So I'll be finishing up my grad school in the spring, and then I'll start publishing, hopefully about my research project. But in the meantime, you can find me at natureninjabirding.com. And yeah, if you want to come down and go birding, I'd be happy to show you around.
Cool. Can we snag an acknowledgments in your thesis?
Sure.
Awesome.
It's just a couple words, right?
Can add to your word count, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I had a professor who he had some funny comment about, like, he was like, I was hoping for second author, but all I got was an acknowledgments or something like that.
Brutal. I'll
Yeah.
make you guys co-authors if you want.
Oh,
That'd be
perfect.
great. Yeah. Well, cool, man. Thanks so much for taking the time. Thanks everyone for watching and listening to this episode of the Badgerland Birding Podcast.